Florida Safety Council provides DUI and alcohol-related programs with the goal of making lifelong behavioral changes in past offenders to prevent future injuries and death. Ann Rollison, director of these DUI and behavior management programs, is here to discuss how these changes are made. Hi, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you very much. I appreciate you offering us the opportunity, with December being DUI impaired driving awareness month. It's a great opportunity and we really, really appreciate it. It is a growing significant issue in our community. And we do everything we can to help save lives. And I appreciate you giving us this platform and this opportunity. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for taking the time of being here and being open to answering some questions.
Sure.
Can you share with us what different types of impaired driving there are?
Actually, the most common is drunk driving. That's what many people understand is dangerous and have, for the most part, really good awareness of that drunk driving really should be avoided. What we see as a growing trend across the entire nation, though, is a combination of different issues. Any impairing substance, and even including medications, is prohibited by law, and you can be arrested for a DUI even taking a medication that's legally prescribed to you. If you mix medications with alcohol, many medications are what we call contraindicated or synergistic with alcohol, which means they amplify the effects of each other. So you might only have 1 or 2 alcohol drinks and think you're perfectly okay, but when you mix it with a medication, both get amplified. And consequently, you experience a much greater level of impairment than you would typically experience if you had one or the other individually. And consequently, many people think they have 1 or 2 drinks and they're okay, but they mix it with a medication and then they end up getting arrested because they are genuinely impaired. Nationwide, we see significant increases with medical marijuana. Impaired driving. You can be impaired simply by taking medical marijuana if it's high in THC. Many people consuming medical marijuana legally are impaired by it, and there's not near as good awareness about that. Marijuana is also one of those things that's synergistic again with alcohol. So once again, you have 1 or 2 drinks, you take your medical marijuana, and then combined creates a significant level of impairment. Also, just nationwide, we're seeing more and more people that are being identified as mixing just drugs together. Actually, the classic drunk driver that is just impaired by alcohol, that's only about 25% of the people who are actually impaired that are actually tested. Not everybody is tested for what we would call polysubstances, multiple substances in their system. It's a very complex problem. We try to address the entire issue. When clients do come in to see us, we try to collect all the information about all the substances. And we do, all of our courses address basically just what I was just saying, how all these different substances can come together and impair a person's ability to drive.
Well, tell us about some of those programs that you have.
Okay, so we have the DUI program. We are licensed by the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. We are the DUI program that serves Orange, Osceola, Seminole, and Brevard counties. Everybody that is arrested for either a refusal or an actual DUI has to come to DUI school. It's a part of the administrative sanctions of the offense. A lot of people get misconstrued and they get a little confused about the legalities of it because you do have to go to court. But when you're issued either a suspension for a refusal or a suspension for a DUI offense, to satisfy that suspension on the driving record, you have to come to DUI school. There's 2 different courses, a first offenders course and a multiple offenders course. The first one is primarily pure educational. We assume that a lot of people know drunk driving's bad. They don't know what drunk driving really is. They don't know how early impairment starts. So the first offenders course focuses on providing education, providing information, assuming that the average person who comes in is really motivated for this not to happen again, and we just simply provide them education. The multiple offender class is a person who has been arrested more than one time for these things. So in that course, we do more application, more, okay, we gave you information that didn't produce lasting change. So now we're gonna make you go through exercises where you apply the information to yourself individually. There's also a risk assessment where we go through and we have a one-on-one assessment with a person, and we determine whether or not they need to be referred to counseling. Florida DUI programs are remarkably successful, and that's one thing I don't think gets out there very much at all. If a person does everything that we, the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, and the courts require of them, there is less than a 10% chance that they'll get rearrested in the next 20 years. Most people who come to DUI school have never been arrested in their life. They've never sat down and talked with a professional about their substance usage in their life, and they think it's normal when it's not.
So you've really changed people's behaviors and lives through this program.
We give them the opportunity to change their own lives. We can't change anybody. Yeah. But as I tell my staff, I'm like, just approach your job as you're speaking truth into people's lives. And sometimes truth is hard to hear. But yes, and DUI has, most people do not understand. Historically, from like the mid-'80s to pre-pandemic, about 1 in 3 fatalities on the road were alcohol or drug related. Since the pandemic, Orange County, the most recent estimates, is up to 49%. Almost 1 in every 2 crash fatalities is substance related. Wow. And it seems that people have turned to substances to deal with the stresses of the pandemic, and that's bleeding over to the roadways. And it's 100% preventable. 100%. Nobody makes anybody get behind the wheel. And so we're just trying to get the word out and trying to get people to understand that this is a very complex thing, and it seems so easy. And it's all about prevention. It's all about not getting behind the wheel, not giving yourself the opportunity to get behind the wheel. When I teach class, I tell people, I'm like, so you're using your impaired judgment to judge whether or not you're impaired.
Yeah, by then it's too late.
By then it's too late.
I know.
And there's so many opportunities.
I know in college when we went out to parties, where we know there was going to be drinking, we'd always have a designated driver.
Yes.
I was usually that person because I was the only one who had my license. But
thank you.
The rule was like no drinking at all.
Right.
Not even one.
Right. And
so
that is one of the things we see.
Because once you have that first drink, then you have that second, then you have that third because your decision making is now impaired.
Correct.
So so the rule was no drinking at all.
Right.
And that you're the designated driver.
Right. So, people ask all the time, well, how many drinks can I have before I'm impaired? And that's very specific to an individual for a number of reasons. But the actual first drink, the very first effect alcohol has on your body is this part of your brain that's right behind your forehead, which is your frontal lobe. It starts affecting your thinking and your decision making with the very first drink. So are you impaired legally on the first drink? No. But your ability to make decisions moving forward is.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many people, I occasionally teach DUI classes myself. And I can't tell you how many times, I would say virtually every class I've ever taught, there's been somebody with a designated driver who the designated driver was either the person who drank the least or they drank before, and then they were going to sober up at the party, and they didn't.
Yeah.
And so then the designated driver is just as impaired as the others. So that is one of the things that is so important. Designated driver is it's a perfect concept if the person doesn't allow themselves to become impaired by a substance. But I think sometimes in the heat of the moment and just the excitement of the party and everything, it's just one drink's not going to hurt. And it can be
See,
horribly.
that's why you plan after parties at the dorms so that you walk.
Yes. Yes.
Well, okay, so children,
Right. I mean,
I don't know if that's allowed at the dorms at UCF. So.
I don't either. People ask me, I mean, in my personal life and everything, because I go to parties and I do drink. They ask, it's like, so what do you do? And I said, I live alone. I'm a single person, and I'm like, I say, my process is very, very simple. If I have access to my car, I don't put any substance in my body, whether it be a medication. I don't use any illegal drugs. Never have used illegal drugs, but not even one drink. And plenty of people like, not just one drink. And it's like, no, not for me. That's my decision. I can only make decisions for myself, but that's the only sure way of avoiding this is if you have access to your vehicle, don't do it. Don't put one drink in your body. So,
yeah, and now we have all these rideshare opportunities too. You could plan ahead to have a rideshare take you there and take you back.
Correct.
If you're going to.
Correct. And it's all about the planning.
Yeah.
I mean,
before you have a drink.
Yes, absolutely. Before you take that first drink, before you go to the party.
What types of positive impacts have you seen from your program?
Oh, wow. There's 3 parts to a DUI program. There's DUI school, there's Ignition Interlock, and there is a program called Special Supervision Services. Special Supervision Services is a program for people with long-term revocations for DUI. If they're willing to get sober and stay sober, they can potentially get a hardship license. And for some of those people, they're permanently revoked. So they will never drive again without a hardship license or a restricted driver's license, as I think specifically the way highway safety would describe it. So we have had people in that program for many, many years. People have 5-year, 10-year, or permanent revocations. And we have to monitor them. But the thing is we get to see people completely rebuild their lives. I mean, a person who has permanently revoked their license due to their behavior, they've had a lot of consequences. Many of them have wrecked their lives in regard to just lost families, lost jobs. Sometimes they're felons and have all the problems that felons have. To see them year after year, we see them reunite with their families. We see them, start small businesses and actually hire other people. We see them gain college degrees. We see them, purchase homes, and to see them rebuild their lives. And even our Ignition Interlock program, which that is mandated by the state, and we don't see many people. But some of those people come in very, very sick with the disease of addiction. Sometimes it takes that for them to see, the things. We have surveys that are required for our classes even, probably at least one per class. We have people say, I wish I'd been given this information before my arrest. But many, many people, they see very positive changes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all these wonderful successes that you've had.
Certainly.
I definitely would say that I don't think many people understand what services are out there and the help that could be provided.
Right.
So I'm really happy to have you on to be able to share that.
And I would be remiss not to give credit to the counselors that we work with. We have a approved provider network that when people do need to be referred to treatment, that's where a lot of the real gutsy work goes on, especially with somebody with an advanced addiction. We don't do treatment. We have providers that are familiar with the circumstances that lead somebody to this point, because it's not easy to get sober. It's not easy to make these changes in life. And so I'd be remiss to not, give a shout out to all of our counselors that do such hard work with our clients.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah.